if you create a good classroom culture, then the culture will sustain itself even when you're not there to manage. Welcome back to Teacher Tales, where we give you the keys to overcoming teacher burnout to find work life balance and educational bliss if it still exists. I'm your host, Tony Rambles, and on this interview episode of Teacher Tales, culture, beliefs, and behavior take center stage. Me and friend of the program, Sharita, discuss school culture through the lens of a Harvard article by Leah Schaefer and everyone's favorite assistant, ChatGPT. Let's see if your school is building people up or burning them out. Sharita, welcome back.
Thank you for having me again.
Of course, we had it in the works since the first one that we'll be doing another one. Uh, what we would do it on was kind of left open, but we've landed on culture, school culture. So just before we get into that, at this time, and I'll just speak for myself, we are pretty close to uh, STAR, which is the state assessments that's coming up at is it the beginning of April? No, it's in April sometime. So we're like a month out, something like that. And so like a lot of teachers are, kind of ramping up the STAR practice and the extra tutorials.
Oh, so we're also preparing for our state test, which is called MSTEP.
Mm.
So I see that they're getting everyone or all the students more practice time for the MSTEP, practicing some of the vocabulary, those buzzwords that are on the MSTEP. They have a scavenger hunt now every Friday.
Ooh,
And let the students participate in that. They love it. They're like really, really engaged in it. They're very competitive too.
that's great that you brought that up because I would say something like that is directly tied to school culture and leadership and being able to be flexible to go, okay, what will actually work? Because nobody wants to do the star. A lot of people are honestly afraid of whatever state testing that you do. So finding these different ways to make it fun and accessible and not make it feel like it's the end of the world or you're being punished because you have to have some extra tutorials. I think that is awesome and reflects greatly on the leadership. So we did this two ways. The only ways that people would do them now. So we asked my assistant Chad, also known as Chat GPT 3.5. Uh, I said, tell me what makes a school culture. And of course, Chad spit something out. Fire, as always. You always got to check Chad's work, though. I don't know if y'all know that out there, but you can't just copy paste turn that in. That's not ideal. You will come up with some weird stuff. And we also did it. Is this old school now? Just searching up stuff? I think that's going to be old school soon. Everything is going to be AI generated. But we also searched on Google the same thing. Um, tell me what makes a school culture. And so we're going to bounce back and forth between these two wonderful, I guess one is an article written in 2018. Dang, that might be outdated. Everything has changed since 2020. But oh well, it's from Harvard, so it's supposed to be quote unquote reputable. And we're going to compare that with what my assistant Chad says. So, which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with the article.
Okay. The actual uh, source material.
Yes. Okay, so the article that was written in 2018 from Harvard, it starts off with the question, what makes a good school culture? The opening paragraph talks about the principals, since they are the leaders of the schools, and
Mm-hmm.
how they describe the elements that create positive culture within their schools. They also talk about some of the challenging components to have a positive culture. And one quote that sticks out A culture will be strong or weak depending on the interactions between people in the
Mm,
organization. In a strong culture, there are many overlapping and cohesive interactions, so that knowledge about the organization's distinctive character and what it takes to thrive in it is widely spread. End quote. And I think that's very imperative. Um, the people, the teachers, who show up every day for these students set the tone for that culture and climate in their
mhm.
school. Um, you can't complain about, oh, the culture in our school is so bad. But what are you doing as a leader or as a professional to implement or to even have students to look at you and to be the example? Like we always say, leaders lead by example. Like that's the
Mhm.
quote that my principal uses all the time. So like if your students are in class or just in the hallway and they're like running amok, like running through the hallway, cursing, fighting, you have to do like a self reflection, like as a staff, as a school. Um, why is it like this? What do we allow? Because
Mhm.
students, like, my belief is that students or children, period, they'll do what you allow them to do. They always test the waters to see how far they can take it.
Oh, people, period. Adults do it.
That is people, yeah. You're right. That is people.
I would say that I think you can be a leader without having that title. Um, People who are good examples are leaders. You don't just lead by example. Because if you're not leading in a way that people will follow, then you're not a leader, even if you have a title. Like nobody fools with you. Nobody cuts for you. And that's another saying that people would ain't nobody in your corner. Like, so you can have the title of, principal, assistant principal, counselor, teacher, whatever. How you're leading is going to depend on if you are a leader or not, because your influence is just that. Are you influencing people to do, I'm not even going to say what's right or wrong, because a lot of times it's not necessarily about that, but it's more about, are you leading people to do more of the things that will make the school a better place? And so, is that somebody that's understanding, not somebody who has like a short fuse? Are you somebody who is pulling their weight, doing their part, who is volunteering, who is going the extra mile? Because a lot of times people will talk about their kids going the extra mile, doing everything necessary in order to be the best that they can be. But at the same time, that same teacher could be the same person. We get out at 2:45, they running out the doors at 2:48, beating the kids out of the parking lot. So you can't sit up here and preach that, but then not do the necessary things to lead in that way. So those overlapping interactions that the article talks about, that starts to like permeate throughout the campus.
So I have a question. For I don't know if this would be considered a weak culture or not, but what if you had a mixture of both? What if you had equal parts of teachers or admin or just staff that are present, and then you had the other part are the ones that you're talking about, the ones who just go in the room, they do the bare minimum, if anything at all.
I
How do you
don't
think
think
that affects
any
the culture?
bare minimum people aren't they're not really helpful in any industry. I don't think so, because bare minimum people, I'll just talk about teaching. So think about it from this standpoint. In your elementary school, I'm in high school where there are so many clubs, there are a lot of sports, there are a lot of after school activities, there are a lot of things that students want to be involved in, but they need a teacher there always. So a lot of times, what will happen is you have the teacher that does nothing. They inherently create more work for the teacher that is willing to do stuff, because the students know, like, oh, I'm not going to ask that person. They're not down. Like, they leave right away. They tell us they're out of here quick, and that may be for a myriad of reasons. But if everybody just pulled a little bit more weight, you know, that would make the playing a little bit more even, so that you don't have the same teacher coaching two sports, sponsoring a club, and mentoring people. That was me. So, and that is not even including the other things that we do as teachers that don't come with a title. So, and then that also doesn't include all the stuff that we do in our own personal lives. I've had a podcast for the last 3 years. I have a son that's 2 years old, right? So we're all kind of trying to make room for all this stuff that we want to do. But if everybody just pulled, instead of doing the bare minimum, right? If we call the bare minimum a 70, right? Because that's passing. If everybody just did like 80, like just do 10% more, that would even it out for so many more people, and less people will be burned out because of that.
That's where we are, or where I am in the school year. So to go back to your opening question, March 21st, 2024, am I burned out? Well, I think that a lot of things are asked of certain people in my building, and it's always like the same people. And
Right.
I brought that
Reliable
up.
people.
Yeah, and that's what it is. It's reliable. And that's what admin says. It's like, oh, well, I ask you because I know it's going to get done, or I know that, no kids will get hurt in the process. So I'm not going to ask, John Doe because I not very reliable, doesn't show up.
Hmm.
Um, but in hindsight, it's like just make them do whatever it is that you need them to do. Like that's kind of like how I think about things. Like just you don't have to keep coming to me if you just hold this person accountable or hold them to the same standards instead
Hmm.
of putting everything going on certain teachers and not everybody pulling their fair share.
So, Chat GPT, the first thing that my assistant Chad said, the number one thing was leadership. And it says the leadership style of a principal and other administrators greatly impact the school's culture. So, effective leaders set clear expectations, boom, provide support and resources, and foster a positive environment where all members feel valued and empowered. So, leadership is hard. And I don't think people really understand how difficult it is, because, I mean, almost anybody can get one of these titles of assistant principal, or whatever, dean of whatever. Okay. As long as you have the education and you've built enough inroads with people, then you can kind of just rise up the ranks. A lot of people call it failing up. So, my thing is, as a principal or as a leader, how can you now inspire the people who don't want to do stuff, to do just a little bit more, like I said? And you're saying, like, why don't you just make them, just assign it to them and say, all right, have this done by this day. Now, I think that can definitely be a way that it's done. But I would say how you frame that is also important. Because if you just say, hey, do this and have it done, no exceptions, then I don't know, some people you'll rub the wrong way. Some people will be like, all right, I guess I'll just do it. Right? You got to kind of know, right? It goes back to the article where it says these different interactions, right? If I know how to approach Sharita, I know how to get stuff done when I go ask her. If I know how to approach Tony, then I know how to get him to do the stuff I need him to do. And it's difficult for a head principal, to know everybody, especially with the kind of turnover. So that's why you also need those really good assistant principals over their departments to know, like, okay, what buttons do I press to be able to get the most out of each person? And so that comes back to leadership styles, and all of that impacts school culture. Because if you have one bad assistant principal that's over one department, now you can almost just throw that department out the window because that bad leadership is going to undermine a lot of what they do. And I think anybody who's been in education long enough has seen that. So, and that can happen for a myriad of reasons. I have one guy, Pike was on my show. When he lost his mom, he just said I wasn't the same person. I was just it was just a difficult time for me, you know. So if you had an interaction with him at that time, you might think, oh, he sucks, he's the worst. But his reputation couldn't be further from that, you know. So sometimes things happen, and,
Yeah.
you know, leadership is bad for whatever reason. I saw something on Facebook recently that said, I don't remember what the question was, but somebody, it was, I think it was in relation to like burnout, like what changed your mind or what changed your perspective or something like that.
Mhm.
And somebody posted that when I realized that being a teacher is just a job and you just can go, you just go home. I couldn't disagree more.
I 100% agree with you. I think teaching goes beyond the classroom. Um,
Beyond the curriculum.
yes, beyond everything, because it's like, are you gonna? The curriculum is what it is. The state standards are what they are, but you know what your students need. The people at your
Hmm.
central office, they don't know your kids, but you do.
Right, right. I think the more great classroom coaches we have, that will just spill out into the rest of the school, I believe. So we've talked about relationships, uh, communication a little bit. But number two on Chad's thing is vision and mission. A school's vision and mission statements outline its core values, goals, aspirations. Um, it says that these statements guide decision making processes and serve as a unifying force that aligns the actions of students, staff, stakeholders, blah blah blah. How how tied to you are your school's vision and mission, whatever those things are supposed to mean?
Yep. So I think that I'm tied to the point that I'm tangled. I know that sounds really crazy, but I feel tangled. The
Mm-hmm.
reason being is because we have this whole thing is, educate the whole child support. Wherever you see a need, that's where you want to meet that need. Um, Also, students first. You have, people always talk about like manage your classroom. No, manage yourself. They're not, employees working at a plant. Shout out to those people in the big three. But
Hey, hey.
yeah, but they're like, they don't need managing. They need people to show up for them, show them that they care first, and just be there for them. So I think that that's our school mission is, I have a leader. He's all about community. He's all about, making our school feel like one big family. My grandma passed away. Um, my whole school showed up to the viewing during
Wow.
COVID. During COVID, like we're at the funeral. I was like, oh my god! Like that's what we do. We just show up for one another. When I say it, and then when I say I'm tangled, sometimes I say think I'm a little too involved. So that's what I meant by tangled.
They always like every school in the district comes out with like these sayings and stuff, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't change anything that I do. You know, it doesn't change how I teach or how I approach my classroom or my kids. So it's not like I'm looking for this saying or this acronym to be on the wall to inspire me to, I don't know, do something differently. I think it comes from God giving me this platform and the ability to teach and be in the classroom. I'm just always working to be a better teacher and to teach my kids that, you know, you just want to be a better person and you want to push yourself. Like all these life lessons, I'm teaching those to make them better people. So I try to be a good, I would say, I guess, a company man, you know,
Mhm.
and whatever the saying is, I think our principal always says, make good choices. I think she says make good choices at the end of every announcements. So I try to weave that into what we're doing, sometimes if I can. But I don't really, these vision statements and mission and the school, this or that, I'm not going to ever say like it's bad or we don't need it. I would just say it doesn't directly affect my decision making or how I think about my class or my classroom culture. Maybe that may be something that I could try to weave into my class. Maybe that's my next step of okay, me getting better this year is trying to insert the mission, the vision of our school into my classroom and blah blah blah. But maybe that's the next thing, but I wouldn't say like a vision or a mission statement really sways me one way or another as far as school culture is concerned. But I would say this next thing, which is a very, very hot topic, an entire department has been made at a lot of places because of this diversity and inclusion. So I'll read this. It says, embracing diversity and promoting inclusivity are essential aspects of vibrant school culture. Celebrating cultural differences, fostering empathy, creating a safe, welcoming environment. All students and staff can contribute to a sense of belonging and acceptance. So I'll let you go first. Woohoo!
Please. All right. Oh, this is so heavy. Diversity and inclusion. So
Mm,
I'm just going to remind the listeners that in my classroom, it's just kindergarten, but I have a lot of students who receive special ed services, right?
mhm,
They're considered diverse learners. Few of them autism spectrum disorder, some of them ADHD, some of them cognitive impairment, and speech and language delay. So I have to include them in everything. I can't say, oh, Mary doesn't talk, so she just can't be a part of this lesson. We're working on
mhm,
phonemes. I can't hear her sounds, so it's just over with. No, using visual prompts. I have to make those type of accommodations to make sure that they are included in whatever we do. Another thing when it talks about cultural differences, I don't have any this year, but I have in the past. And actually, this person is in eighth grade now. I had her in fourth grade, taught like just about every one of her siblings, but they are Muslim. And she comes down and helps with the students too. Tomorrow, we're doing like a whole Easter egg hunt thing, kindergarten. And she's like, I don't celebrate Easter. I said, oh, yeah, I know. So I didn't want to leave you out. What should we do to, incorporate
mhm,
you? Because I know tomorrow you're going to come down and help with the students. And tomorrow's her birthday. So birthday shout out to her, March 22nd. Um, she's like, I'll help actually hide the eggs. I'll do that. She said, I won't participate in helping them look for it, but I'll do that part. And I was like, well, that was really
mhm.
cool. So I think that's very important in coming to school. Like, school should be a safe haven for everybody.
I like celebrating differences. I asked those questions with those kids. We were talking about because Ramadan's happening right now. So I'm just asking, even though I'm not a Muslim, I care about my students. So when they say that they're fasting, and I'm asking, okay, so what does that look like? So when you do get to eat, what do y'all like to eat, or what about the other part? Because fasting comes with a spiritual element too. So I'm like, what about the prayer, or like what does that look like for y'all? And then I can also share my experience of fasting with my church and that kind of thing. So celebrating those differences, being mindful of them, and being respectful as you ask these questions, I think is really helpful, and it does create a place where people want to be.
And I think students, they get so excited to share,
Mm.
like, oh, let me tell you about my culture. And I think they also get equally excited to hear about what you do and you know, what your religion is or what your cultural background is, no matter what. If it's just like um, how you celebrate your birthday. And that was a journal topic that we had back when I was in upper L. What do you do to celebrate Thanksgiving? And yeah, we all pretty much look similar as far as race, but we all have very different
Mm.
experiences with that
Hmm.
holiday.
Going back to our Harvard piece now, it says these are the five interwoven elements, each of which have the power to influence. So I think we talked about, fundamental beliefs and assumptions, like with the mission and the vision statement.
Yeah,
Share values is interesting, especially when you have a very diverse place. Values are just not the same. Norms, things like showing up at different events for your school. When they all showed up at your grandmother's funeral, that's insane. Like I couldn't even imagine all of those. Well, I guess you have a smaller school, but still,
yeah,
just people showing up because that just doesn't normally happen. Number four is patterns and behaviors, which seem like the same thing as norms. And then tangible evidence. So let's look at let's look at tangible evidence because I don't know how old your school is, but a lot of people say that our school looks like a prison. It's boring. So, what is that tangible part? Like what you can see, being proud of what your school looks like when you walk through those front doors. Like, does that make a difference for you when it comes to school culture and you showing up every day?
absolutely. Whew, I want to go back to when I first started there, 2015. It was very uninviting.
Mm,
Um, but since then, we have had the lockers painted. It's more inviting. It's more colorful. It's painted by hallway too, and it's so nice. Our principal hires this guy. I don't even know this guy's name. Jimmy. That's his name. Jimmy. He
okay, shout out to
paints.
Jimmy.
Yes, shout out to Jimmy. He paints all of our murals, and they are phenomenal. Talking about great leaders, and not just great leaders of the past, but also present.
Good.
They did the see her title is Supreme Court Justice Kantanji. I'm not going to butcher her name. I can't pronounce it, but I know she was elected to the Supreme Court Justice last year. So it's being able to see her. So I even see the students in the hallway. They're looking at these murals and they're like, I know who that is. I know who that is. And
Mm-hmm.
it's very powerful because it's not just like when I was in school, but we didn't have murals, but we had pictures of like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
That's the
And it's just
one.
like, yeah, but it's like, this is not my lifetime.
Yeah.
This is way back in the 60s. I wasn't thought about. But now it's like people um, that they are more familiar with. Like they're like, oh, I saw that person on the news, or you know what I mean. And then we also have a TV screen, and it displays like all like student pictures from like dances, different type of events. The cheerleaders, basketball team is like highlighting everybody, highlighting the teachers and things like that. And when we're just in the hallway going to the restroom, they just love looking at that. It just
Mm.
gives them something to, put their focus or attention on.
I just like that they're putting more effort into it. Like we have stickers up and there are murals being painted by our art club. But I do think that the visuals make a difference, especially when you have a front entrance that's amazing where people walk in and like, dang, look at this place. This is insane. And there's a school down the street, Ridge Point High School. You could probably look it up. And when you walk in, it's just like, wow, like look at this place. And I think that does create this like sense of pride. And
Mhm.
then throughout their hallways, they have people who've graduated. It's almost like a hall of fame. but people who've not just graduated but did stuff. State champion in this, state champion in that, this accolade, that accolade. And being able to like walk down and see that you're a part of a legacy, a great legacy, not just I go to this school, but I'm a part of a place that's associated with greatness. That does serve as some tangible evidence to make people, I don't know, take more accountability for the culture. And I think those people who do that, a lot of times, those are the same people who come back to the school after they've graduated and have gone on to do great things. Those same people who take some pride in the place that they went to school, they come back and they go, I hope this culture is the same as when I was here. And they try to uphold those things and they try to, reach back and teach the kids that are in the position that they're in, that they were in.
I agree with that. I'm thinking back to when I was in high school. If the culture was a little bit better, I would probably be more keen to going back. But
Nah.
now it's yeah.
What about for teachers? Do you feel like when you walk in a place that it makes a difference how it looks?
Not for me personally. I think that I've worked in some pretty crummy buildings. I taught in some really awesome buildings, but I don't think that it really has that much effect on what I do. I know that in my classroom, oh, it's going to be bright and colorful.
Same.
Um, I'm going to try my best to make it look as inviting as possible. A place that not only I want to come every day, but my students want to come every day. Where they're like, oh, I love looking at this data wall. I love, you know what I mean? Um,
Hmm.
Try to make it as interactive as possible.
Yeah, my classroom is the walls are just covered with artwork. There was a box or bin that had a whole bunch of posters in it, and I just took out the ones that I liked. So a lot of people like that wall. And then there is a wall of artwork from kids, either from the art rooms or stuff that's been done in my classroom. There's a wall of, I guess it's kind of like the respect wall, I guess you could call it.
Mhm.
But there is stuff up all over. But I like to collect that artwork, and I like my room to be a place where people walk in and they go, wow, like this looks like a fun place to be. So that atmosphere is also tangible inside your classroom to create the culture of your classroom and what that looks like. And another thing that I do is I like to play music. But that classroom culture piece is very important to me because I think that's more important than classroom management. If you create a good classroom culture, then the culture will sustain itself even when you're not there to manage. That's so good. That was good.
That is super good. Yeah, I agree. I think that sometimes when we have to be out for whatever reason, that our students, they understand the routine and they understand the expectations of our classrooms. Um, and I think that your classroom should still run the way it would run if you were there. But that takes a lot of practice too. And I noticed that in my earlier years, I used to make a lot of mistakes. I would implement something, practice it a couple times, and be like, okay, we did it. And then kind of have this high expectation, like, why didn't you guys keep doing it? Well, they out of practice.
Mm.
So, be mad at yourself. You didn't do any follow through.
How does school culture affect burnout?
No one wants to work in a toxic work environment.
True.
Um, Toxic from whomever. If you have someone who is not present and allowing students to just like fly off the handles, that creates a lot of burnout. It's like I have a lot of teacher adversaries in the district, and they tell me about their school, and they go, well, I sent this student to the principal and they sent them back with a treat. Like the student just
Mm.
cursed me out and they come back with a treat. So it's like that frustration of, people not having your back, or it's just chaotic. I always say I can't work in chaos. I don't work well like that. And I think for most normal people, they don't work well or thrive in chaos. Um, I think also you really have to watch how you treat the people you work with as well.
Mm.
And the reason I say that is because you never know what people have going on in their lives, and you never know actually when you're going to need that person. I told you I worked in some crazy places where yelling and screaming. I had a principal and an assistant principal sit and yell and scream at each other in the office almost every day. So how do you think
That's
that
too
set the
much.
culture? Yeah, like how do you think that set the culture climate for that school? It's like we just looked at them like, okay, they're crazy. We don't engage with them. They're not approachable. I was always so nervous to even go ask either one of them something. Like, because I'm
You
scared
didn't
I'm
want
going
to
to
get
get
yelled
chewed
at.
out. Yeah, like I'm going to get yelled at for asking a simple question or looked at funny. But yeah, I think when people enter a school, they should feel like, wow, this is a really awesome environment for learning. This is the culture here is just amazing. Instead of how would you feel you taking your son to school for the first time and you got teachers that are yelling at each other, principal yelling at the assistant principal, and vice versa. It's just not a welcoming place.
Yeah, I think the culture burns people out faster than anything because the culture sets the culture. It sets the expectation. It sets the rules that people follow, the rules that people don't. Do you feel comfortable taking a day off? You know, can you be out? Are you asked to do everything while the person next door is asked to do nothing? Like all of that, like we've talked about over the past hour or so, is all a part of the school culture. And school culture directly affects burnout. So if you're in a place where you feel, you feel wanted, you feel valued, you feel accepted, included, then you just don't burn out as fast. Um, I would say there are other things that contribute to burnout aside from school culture, but school culture is definitely, I would say, number two to people personally taking care of themselves.
Yeah.
So I think that's it. I think we're good. Thanks to my assistant Chad in the
And
illustrious
Harvard.
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 I hope you all enjoyed that conversation between me and Sharita. It was awesome being able to talk about school culture, what that looks like, and what needs to be done from all levels, top down and bottom up. It was a pleasure having this conversation about all of it. Before we get out of here, remember, creating a positive school culture that supports teachers, students, and admin takes intentionality. Creating strategies that include everyone and can be carried by everyone is the key. I hope you're able to implement some of these or all of these strategies as much as you can at whatever school you teach, at whatever level, in whatever capacity. Because you enjoyed what you heard from this episode, go join the Teacher Triumphs Facebook group. Me and Jen Jamie created it as a way to help you overcome burnout and balance life by building community with other wonderful educators. Thank you for listening. I'll be back next Monday and Thursday with more Teacher Tales. Keep teaching, keep learning, and I will see you all on the next journey.